Salaspils, a small name on a small map. But behind that name lies one of the darkest, most terrifying stories from World War II. A story most people have never even heard of. When we think of Nazi camps, we usually think of Auschwitz, Treblinka, or Dachau. Those names are burned into history, but there was another place, smaller, hidden, almost forgotten, where some of the most horrific things imaginable happened. That place was Salaspils in Latvia. To understand how such a place came to exist, we have to travel back to 1941. The Nazis had just invaded the Soviet Union in a massive military operation called Operation Barbarossa. Latvia, one of the Baltic countries on the eastern coast of Europe, was quickly occupied by German forces. Under Nazi control, Latvia became a place of violence, fear, and persecution. The Jewish population was targeted almost immediately, but the Nazis didn't stop there. They wanted complete control, political, racial, and ideological. Anyone they saw as a threat, anyone who didn't fit their idea of a pure world, was imprisoned, enslaved, or killed. They needed a camp near Riga, Latvia's capital, to hold prisoners, a place where Jews, Soviet prisoners, partisans, and political enemies could be kept, punished, or sent elsewhere. In late 1941, they began building it, in a quiet forest area near the small town of Salaspils. At first, Salaspils was meant to be a transit camp, but that was just a word. In reality, it became something much worse. The people forced to build the camp, mostly Jews and Soviet prisoners, were starved, beaten, and worked to death before the camp was even finished. When Salaspils finally opened, it turned into a place of terror. The Nazis called it an education and labor camp. But that name was a cruel joke. There was no education, no rehabilitation, only punishment, hunger, disease, and death. Thousands of people were brought to Salaspils, some from the Riga ghetto, some from Belarus and Russia. Others were Latvians accused of helping resistance fighters, and among them, heartbreakingly, were children. Yes, children. That's what makes Salaspils so horrifying. It wasn't just a camp for adults, it became a camp for kids, and many of them never came out alive. During the war, the Nazis destroyed entire villages in Belarus and parts of Russia. They killed the adults and brought the children to Salaspils. Some were toddlers, barely old enough to walk. Others were school age. They were separated from their families, left alone, hungry, and afraid. In the camp, the children were not treated as human beings. They were used, experimented on, starved, and abused. Nazi doctors regularly took blood from the children for transfusions to wounded German soldiers at the front lines. These weren't simple medical procedures. They were done over and over again, even when the children were too weak to move. Many died right there on the wooden tables, their bodies carried out to shallow graves behind the barracks. The adults in the camp could hear the cries of those children at night. Survivors later said that those sounds never left their minds. The endless crying, the coughing, the silence after a child's last breath. Salaspils wasn't officially labeled an extermination camp like Auschwitz, but that doesn't mean people weren't killed there. They were. Thousands of them. Some were shot. Others died from starvation, disease, or exhaustion. Some froze to death during the brutal Baltic winters. The conditions were beyond cruel. The prisoners lived in long wooden barracks with no insulation. Lice and rats were everywhere. There was little food, watery soup, a small piece of bread, maybe some rotten potatoes. People collapsed from hunger and were beaten for being too weak to work. Punishments were constant. Guards beat prisoners for smiling, for speaking, for looking in the wrong direction. They forced people to dig their own graves or to watch while others were executed. And yet, even in that hellish place, some tried to help one another. Prisoners shared crumbs of bread, whispered words of comfort, or risked their lives to hide the sick. These small acts of humanity, in a place designed to destroy it, are what kept some people alive. When the Soviet army advanced toward Latvia in 1944, the Nazis tried to cover up what they had done. They destroyed records, burned buildings, and killed witnesses. But the truth could not be erased. When Soviet investigators arrived, they found mass graves around the camp. They found bones, children's shoes, and blood-stained walls. They interviewed survivors who told them what had really happened. It's hard to know exactly how many people died in Salaspils. Estimates vary. Some say around 3,000. Others believe it could have been 10,000 or even 20,000. The exact number may never be known, but each number was a life. Each was a person with a name, a story, a family, and dreams that never had the chance to come true.